Here I am. I have 6 lovely cats at home. But it doesn't matter. You know, you drop a cat from a 10-story building, it probably bounce. That doesn't mean there's any life left in the cat. Now here, I'm sure there are more you could add, but here are the 6 major economic headwinds that I think Obama's policies face between now and election. And these are headwinds which I think he's exacerbating. Number 1, as you know, the marginal tax rates are set to rise. So I ask you a question: when capital gains and income taxes go up by 33% and the estate taxes take an infinite leap, do you get more or less investment, saving, employment, wealth creation, tax revenues, or real GDP growth? And the answer, of course, is less of all of the above. So the economy gets weaker. And this is all before, mind you, the 3.8% health care tax on investment income kicks in. Number 2, we continue pursuing insane energy policies. Folks, energy is the key input, economic input, to everything we do, both in the household and in industry. What they'd like to do is saddle us with a cap and trade. Our energy prices will skyrocket. The estimates from Heritage and Cato and many of the other national think tanks and study groups show that it would cost America 4 million jobs. It would reduce household incomes somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000 annually if that all kicked in. Why? Well, as a microcosm, I'll give you an idea. Why? Because what they'd like to do is subsidize wind power. Wind power today costs 75% more than coal. Coal is half of our energy production for electricity. Solar averages 700% more than coal. So again, the question doesn't even need a moron to answer it. The economy gets weaker as these energy prices drain discretionary purchasing power from the economy. Thirdly, the Federal Reserve is in a box. The Federal Reserve, the central bank, is in a box. They must raise taxes this year. You have rising interest rates, of course, increase the cost of borrowing. They reduce the ultimate lending and profitability of investments, so the economy gets weaker. Number 4, existing Treasury debt and funded liabilities are already unserviceable. The Chinese have publicly balked at holding more U.S. Treasury debt. They hold some $800 to $900 billion already. And the other big external holder of our Treasury debt, Japan and the United Arab Emirates, they're in the financial soup themselves. Meanwhile, the annual Treasury deficits soar. Our unfunded liabilities, Medicare, Social Security, I've already mentioned that. The problem's this: with the prospects for U.S. GDP growth, nowhere even remotely fast enough or for long enough at that 3% plus level to diffuse, pay down the $14 trillion debt that is most in the news. What do you suppose happens to the value of the dollar? Ultimately, our inflation rates or anything else. Yep, the economy weakens. So you got those 4. Then you got a 5th factor as a headwind. The union pressures for protectionism are now threatening to derail free trade, or what's left of it. Thanks to a lot of special interest groups, they're blocking free trade, even agreements to lower what's essentially a tariff or a tax rate on mostly Americans and these other allied countries, such as Korea, Honduras, Colombia. And of course, they keep this up, and as the economy stays weak, these forces get even more virulent to get protection. And all that does, as we know from the 30s and Smoot-Hawley tariff, it's calamitous. It results in retaliation. And the one sector of the U.S. economy that for 4 years now has pulled us into positive territory up to the recession, that too is cut out from under us. 6th reason, I think we can count on an ally in the economy in terms of getting people focused and angry at what's being done to them. is government spending, the nationalizations, the increased displacement of productive private activity, more regulation, new programs that cause uncertainty. That is the most lethal threat to a market system. Folks, people in a market economy are the finest ever known on earth at handling risk. We convert risk into measured quantities, actuarial, operative variables, and create industries around it that help protect and advance our markets, financial and otherwise. Uncertainty, on the other hand, is nothing we can deal with. That is, people act rationally. People may be poor, they ain't stupid. And if they're told, sometime in the future you can expect another, what do you call it, the junker program, the whatever. Thanks, yeah. Yeah, what do? They sit on their hands. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So to the extent these programs and the proliferation of these programs creates even more uncertainty in all the industries, not just the auto or the retail auto, the more the economy essentially sits on its hands, sponsors saving, not investment or spending. So for all of these reasons, and again, more that you could probably add to the list very easily, there's very little likelihood that the economic trends prior to the elections will be friendly to incumbents. All that said, what might we see emerging as a winning platform for reform and rejection of the Marxists now in Washington or the State House? In Michigan, there are 4 imperatives. That is, if we're to restore the former preeminence of our economy. First, you have to do a Christie. You have to cut state budgets by at least 15%. You have to do that. The state essentially is approaching insolvency if we're not already there. Secondly, you have to phase out the state income tax in order to, and that's both the individual and the corporate income tax, in order to compete with the other 9 states without that tax. Thirdly, you have to pass right-to-work legislation, bringing Michigan You see, the tax cuts come after you've taken care of the spending. Otherwise, you're just advancing the debt into a new generation yet unborn. But passing right to work, and I'll be writing an article on that for D-Business very shortly, how to do it. It brings Michigan into competitive alignment with the other 22 right-to-work states that have been eating Michigan's lunch for the past 35 years. Right to work means unions are great, but in the state of Michigan you're not required to hold a union card or pay union dues in order to hold a job. Simple as that. Fourthly, you have to bring government pay and benefits into competitive alignment with those in the private sector. Today, the public sector in Michigan pays, on average, 32% more than the comparable jobs in the private sector. That's pay. When you look at the whole compensation package and you take out the part that is benefits, it's 81% higher. 81% higher in the public sector. You can't live with that. The Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and we brought some information. I have more if you'd like it. But the studies show that by bringing into competitive alignment, that is an even playing field, the entire compensation package of the public sector in Michigan with that of the private sector, you'd be guaranteeing a saving of $5.7 billion annually. That ain't chicken feed in a state that's running a chronic $3 billion deficit annually. Fifthly, you have to make Michigan's legislature a part-time body. There are only 6 other states that have full-time legislatures. And I ask you, Michigan is a hideous anachronism. You think about it, here's Texas.